They get into your phone, call our CFO to try to do $1 million ransom call. My tires were slashed. We had multiple individuals try to kidnap our children.
Pastor Les says, "What is the threshold by which you will support this project?" And they said,
"Those 4 voted against us because this is political and they do not like the church."
We get to church and on every single door of our church is taped.
Disrespecting the mayors, disrespecting our church, disrespecting the sheriff, and then that's the representative that's standing with you?
We have another woman that begins to accuse me of, they put our address in the Oakhurst Neighborhood text to tell people to come to our home to...
I asked the question in our last meeting with the ONA, is there any level at which you would support this project? The answer was...
Hello everybody, Heather Schott here, your host of Holy Disruption, and today we have a special edition of Holy Disruption podcast. Before I go into it, I want to let you know the amazing people, men of God that I have on the podcast with me today. My husband, Landon Schott, thank you for being here.
It's good to be here.
Nate Schatzline, pastor of Mercy Culture Church, Texas State Rep. Thank you for being here.
"Oh, excited. Let's do it."
Kyle Fonville, our legal counsel, who's epic, amazing, turning into an abolitionist reformer.
That's right.
And Pastor Les Cody of Mercy Culture Waco, here again with me today on another podcast.
Great to be here.
Okay, so today I said it's a special episode. We have the most we've ever had on a podcast before because these are pivotal voices that I chose to speak into sharing the whole story of what has taken place with the Justice Residents. And if you haven't already known, a massive victory just took place for the Justice Residents. Multiple years of a war, fighting with the Oakhurst Neighborhood, the ONA, behind the church, some of the different city leaders and staff members. It has been almost a 4-year war that just a couple weeks ago, we got victory going before the city council. They voted in favor to build the Justice Residence, which is our legal right to do. But in the meantime of going before zoning commission, city council, we got to listen to a lot of the different opinions and really accusations, the stances of people in the neighborhood, which I believe we're going to talk about it. Many, I think, are really, really awesome, good individuals that have been caught up in fear and some of the accusations that have been swirling. And so this is why we're doing this special today, is to clear the air, share the whole story of what we don't have time in a city council meeting or zoning commission, with that time ticking and giving us a couple minutes to share. Today, we are telling you the whole story. You can take our side of the story, do with it what you want. We're going to be giving you a timeline of what has been taking place the last few years. And I think one of the things that we have heard consistently is that we have had a continued unwillingness, this is their quote, to work with Oakhurst residents, that we have just refused to talk with them, to have meetings, to work with them, to hear them out. And obviously, we would disagree with that, and we're gonna give you the why. So it started back in early 2021.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It started 20 years before that.
It did.
Because before Mercy Culture was a church, there was a church here named Calvary.
Yep.
And the ONA resisted, opposed, and was difficult to work with that church for 20 years as they built a school and updated the building, and they went from being downtown and being portable, and they took over from the church that was here. And so it's been years of this. And of the prior church bending over backwards to accommodate every requirement, every demand. And then when it got into our standpoint,
the Justice Residents.
In Mercy Culture, we lead a little differently. So God speaks to us, tells us what to do. It was never in our hearts to pastor. That's not what we were doing. We had a successful business and ministry in Austin, and we were living our best life. And then God told us to come here and do this. And so we started obeying the Lord with what he told us to do. And so we have to obey the Lord in what he tells us to do, despite of what anyone else thinks that we should be doing. So then it picks up in 2021.
Well, and I'll add to that, just from a factual standpoint, the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, it wasn't like they were opposing Calvary on projects that were bringing reformation like the Justice residents. They were opposing them on changing light bulbs in the parking lot. I mean, the hostility was not rooted in anything foundationally true. It truly has been a hostility towards our Christian faith. That's what this has been built upon.
Absolutely. It does boil down to, and those pastors from the church still attend Mercy Culture Church. So this isn't hearsay. This is coming from their mouths of saying they were some of the hardest people in 20 plus years of pastoring on this campus in Fort Worth, them resisting them on all fronts, any changes, any signage, any lighting, building the school, anything. It was a fight. These people were fighting. People in the neighborhood were fighting and resisting the legal right for the church to build or make these changes to the property.
Yeah, I think it's important to say, just like any homeowners association, we've all heard horror stories of HOAs. It's a handful of people that fight these fights. There are hundreds of people that live in the Oakhurst neighborhood, and probably the vast majority of them didn't even know there was a fight going on about a sign or about light bulb changes.
Yeah.
And that's who we're speaking to, are the people in the community who have been brought up and caught up in this swirl of really lies and fear-mongering of what this residence is going to bring. We're speaking to those reasonable people.
So years of this taking place of resistance from the neighborhood prior to us ever being here. Fast forward, we get the property in 2020. 2021, we begin to work on what we call the Justice Residence, which is a long-term restoration home for survivors being rescued out of human trafficking. A vision that the Lord gave us a long time ago, fits with our zoning. We're going to take a deep dive all into that. I don't think we realize the resistance we are going to get, but the resistance met us from day one. And so the city said, you should really get together with the neighbors. You should cast the vision, tell them all these things, and maybe it's gonna help some of their fears. It's gonna help some of the wrong ideas that they have about the residents. So what we decided to do early 2021, you were there with me, Pastor Les, I'm excited for you to speak into it also, is we host this night at the church. We serve hors d'oeuvres, we serve drinks, we pack out one of our rooms with all of these neighbors. We have a basket in the back, and we say, drop all of your questions in the basket, because we're going to open up with a full presentation from our architects, our builders. We're going to show you all of the plans and how this is going to better our neighborhood. And then we'll spend all the time getting to your questions at the end. Would you like to fill in of how this night went?
So to back up just a bit, we've spent considerable time and considerable money to develop a plan to show to the neighborhood. So that includes artistic renderings, it includes very detailed plans, things that we are not required by the city to do, but to just allay some of the fears that this is going to be ugly or this is going to be intrusive in any way. We've spent extra money that we don't have to spend to make sure that this is a beautiful property, that it's architected well, that the aesthetics are lovely, both for the dignity of the women that will be living there, and that we are good neighbors and that we are great.
Our sheriff also, who is an expert in anti-human trafficking and in trafficking. He's an expert. He has his own task force that he's brought into
Which is
Fort
one
Worth.
of the most successful in the nation.
Yep.
Yeah, the task force in Fort Worth has been modeled across the country.
He's been a huge support of this project and us personally from the beginning. And so he even filmed a video of this night sharing his why this would better the neighborhood, why it would better the city, and why this was needed.
And he's been a part for years. He's been speaking into this project and voiced his support for many years. So we have this meeting. We invite all of these people to come. We ask them to write down at the beginning of the night their questions. What we did was we took their questions, we read them in the back, and we consolidated questions. As you can imagine, we have hundreds of people in a room. There's going to be a lot of multiple
like you
questions.
do in every Q&A.
In every Q&A.
In every ministry we have.
So there were three basic...
So give us an example.
There were three basic categories. You got legitimate questions, right? The second category is duplicates. So what are you going to do about parking, and how many parking spaces are there going to be?
You can answer in one.
We can answer in one question. There might have been 10 questions that related to parking. We consolidated them. And then the third category was accusations. Why are you abusing women? Why are you stealing money? That's like me meeting with Kyle and go, why do you beat your wife? That's not a great conversation starter. And so we took those clearly mean-spirited accusations that come from a bad faith, and we disregarded those. And we're not going to get into that at a meeting like this. And so we consolidated the other questions, and we took great pains to ensure that we answered every single legitimate question.
All of those questions.
Every single one of them.
That whole meeting, we were there for over 3 hours.
Yes.
That night.
And you mentioned it earlier. We provided, and this is it's just what we do at Mercy Culture. We want to serve people.
Yeah.
And honor is one of our values. Excellence is one of our values as a community. We operated in honor. We operated with excellence. We had greeters there. We wanted to make sure that the community felt loved, because they are loved. And many of our members live right here. And we participate in this community, and we want this community to be the best it could be, just as much as anybody else does.
And yet it still turned into an episode of Jerry Springer.
Yeah,
it really did.
We get to the
devolved.
end, right?
Yeah.
And I'm on my last question, and there's a guy that walked in way late into the meeting. He throws his hands up in the air. Wait, you didn't get to my question. Another lady from the O&A stands up, starts screaming at me, shaking her fist.
It was about signage.
I didn't
remember.
ask. That wasn't even about. It
Yeah.
wasn't even about. Okay, so Nate, you were there that night too.
Yep.
It was not even about the Justice residents. She wanted questions about signage on the side of our building that was painted on the side of our building.
What was the signage going to look like, of which they had already seen? They had already seen all things.
Because we'd gone through the entire presentation of the images, everything that was on there. So they all start screaming, yelling. I'm trying to answer this gentleman in the back and let him know, hey, we submitted our questions in the beginning. As people are screaming at me, he's mad, he's angry. The next thing you know, there's an uproar of multiple people standing up and yelling. And it turns into a mob, to the point that security takes me out and walks me out.
Exactly. It got to the point
After
where it was
serving
unsafe.
them for over 3 hours.
It was unsafe for you to be in the room. And so, like you said, security had to remove you from the room. But let's go back. That was after you had answered every legitimate question that was submitted when people arrived.
That was not accusational.
That's correct.
Or was not a duplicate. I answered every single question that night. And so after that night, for me personally, it was like, okay, these people will not be appeased. This is what we're going to do.
I declare, let freedom ring loud to awaken faith and strategy in those that rescue to rescue more. And let the sound awaken the fear of God in traffickers and anyone that should think that they could stand in the way of God's dreams being released in the earth.
We're going to pause, we're going to fast, we're going to pray, and we're going to begin to build internally, okay? So as we begin to build internally on writing a biblical-based curriculum for this place, raising up 100 advocates, so every single girl has an advocate. They went through a year of training. This has never been done
This is
before.
key. People don't understand. When you say raise up 100 advocates, it is a year-long training program. It's very intense. We have experts in this field that have spoken into it. We have educators, professional educators.
Along with
we
the
have
curriculum.
Legal experts. We have medical experts. We have pastors, counselors, leaders that have spoken into this for years
I'll throw
write
this out
the
too.
program.
I think this is really important, because even when I've talked about this with other people, one of the things I've hit on is we're not trying to do something that we're unqualified for either.
Right.
This is not a rehab center.
Right. That's
this
right.
is not a hospital. This is a discipleship program to help rescue these women from a lifestyle choice and say, hey, we're going to reform the way you think so that you go out and be productive citizens and encounter the Lord.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing.
So it's so important.
Well, it's important because people will come at this from, well, do you have your medical degree? Like, that's one of the questions that someone asked me about this, and I'm like, no, do you? Like, it's an immediate question, but
yeah, like immediately they want you to feel intimidated that because it wasn't your story, you're not a survivor, or you don't have a medical degree, that Nate, you don't get to speak into human trafficking.
Correct.
And they are better at disqualifying people from helping victims of sex trafficking than qualifying.
It reminds
me.
And
this is a problem. This is a problem that I just want to say really quick, because they will fight and tear down all day long and say, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't do this, yet they have never done it themselves. And they're trying to tell us what we can't do that they have never done.
Reading on one person's website, their opinion doesn't make you an expert when you read someone else's opinion. Yeah. And you see this in life, and you see it in the church world all the time. It's the same sports guys that don't play and tell you how to do it. You see it in church that everybody wants to tell you about how the Holy Spirit doesn't move or how you don't hear from God, but they can't tell you who can and how you can. So you see this a lot in society. But what it means to have advocates is you have these personal coaches, these mentors that are with these girls along the way. So you have business people in our community that have hundreds and hundreds of jobs that they give people jobs. And then an advocate can say, hey, we know a business guy in our church that wants to give you a job when you're ready for it.
Yes.
So you have people that have that girl's best interest in mind, walking her through discipleship.
That surrounds them is so necessary for their restoration.
And I want to say one more thing.
Which the church gives.
The other mindset is what? Do nothing?
That's it.
Yeah.
Let them stay in their captive, molestating, sexual perversion bondage versus a church community that is surrounding to help.
That's why there's 55 beds in the whole state.
Well, and I'll speak to that.
Yeah.
Here's
That's
the thing.
the reason.
When this happened, that meeting specifically, I was running for office. I was not elected yet. Ironically, I got put on the criminal jurisprudence committee as a Texas state representative, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be educated on so many things to help the justice residences. Ironically, law enforcement, all of these witnesses are coming to testify to all these different cases, all these different laws, saying we don't have any solutions. And I'm like, oh, so the experts don't know what to do, therefore no one's doing anything.
That's it. It's paralyzing.
100%.
So,
if anybody, you don't have to be well-versed in anti-human trafficking, anything that they try. Look at the war that we are in our nation right now. We are losing the battle badly.
But what did Jesus say?
We are losing the battle.
He said,
wait, hold on one second.
Okay.
We're losing the battle because people are better at attacking or placing fear and intimidation in other individuals that want to step out and help hurting people, victims. So what does that cause good people to do? It causes good people, man, if I'm going to be accused of that.
That's right.
Man, if
I'm not
going
to do anything.
I probably shouldn't step out into this war, because look at what they're doing to them, and they're probably going to do it to me.
Yeah.
And now we just all settle that the best place for me personally and for other people to feel good and about where they're at or their neighborhood and that they're safe in their homes is just to keep people unsafe in their bondage and in their abuse. And that's the place that we get to with the accusations and the attacks of individuals trying to say people like us, churches, should not be the ones building restoration homes like this.
Jesus said, when you visited me, when you clothed me, when you fed me, you did it unto me. And that, in essence, is what we're doing at the Justice Residence.
Yeah.
We're housing. We have people visiting them every day. We have people that are leading them, guiding them, discipling them. We're clothing them. We're feeding them. We're loving them well. And that is the greatest thing that you can do, on top of so many more tactics of care.
Yes.
But the greatest thing that we can do is to love well.
Right.
So during this time, we're building internally all of these different things of preparation.
Well, I want to go back to the meeting because there were really good things that came out of the meeting. It wasn't a waste of time, and I wasn't there, but my understanding is you didn't have the full set of plans we have today. You had some renderings, you had some ideas, a basic set of plans. But you did receive constructive feedback from the neighbors that you were able to work back into your plans, right?
Yes, absolutely. Which we followed up probably a couple years later, because we took a pause and we were like, okay, let's make sure everything in these plans follow every city ordinance. Let's take into what they're saying. They don't want an ugly wall up on the south side of their neighborhood. So let's make it look residential. Let's invest stone. Let's invest brick, which is honestly hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars more. We had an amazing business come forward that says they're going to help with that, which is huge. They had the complaint, which we can go into these topics, but with parking, different things like that they brought, that we legitimately brought into our meetings and said, how can we help? How can we help with some of their concerns? The other thing was, is it going to look residential and not just like an ugly building in our neighborhood? This is literally a beautiful state-of-the-art building.
Yes.
I was in real estate for years. I was a successful, very successful realtor. Took all of the design from the outside, how it's going to fit with the neighborhood. I mean, we took all of the time, what you were sharing before, during, after, and really the last couple of years.
We've had
to take the
dozens and dozens of meetings with our board, with experts, with architects, to ensure that we're going through this in the proper way and to be the best neighbors that we can be.
Yeah, and I wanted to, you raised the issue of the security wall or the security border, and I think that's just interesting and kind of tells the story of what opposition we ran into. So in one of the zoning commission hearings, they said, well, this has a massive wall on it. It must be an unsafe activity. And they actually said it's an admission by us that it's unsafe. But if you rewind the clock and you find out what that wall, it really started as a fence. But the neighborhood said, well, we don't really want to see what's going on this property. We need some kind of line of sight barrier. And so that's when we decided to invest in building this massive wall. The wall is not for safety. The wall is for the neighbors. And then it was used against us. So
absolutely. And, on that note, something else that was really brought up that night was the security. And they wanted to make sure, we want to know that it's going to have top-of-the-line security and that it's keeping our neighborhood, these girls, everybody safe. We reassured them that we were going to have top-of-the-line security. And guess what? Just like our school, just like our church has had security, not because there's bad things that are going to cause criminal activity in our neighborhood, because there's valuable things in that school. There's valuable things in that church. There's going to be valuable women in that residence. And in the same way that they probably have security systems on their home or on their cars, is to protect valuables that they have. And now it's been spun from the beginning of making sure you're gonna have a security system, right? To wait. Your security system means that this is going to be unsafe for our neighborhood.
They did this in person with us in our most recent meeting with the Oakhurst Neighborhood. It's a peculiar thing for me because they're also voters in my campaign, of which many of them did not vote for me. Go figure. But that's fine. I still serve them, and I'm honored to serve them. And so in many of the meetings that we've had, ironically, with their request to make sure we had top-of-the-line security, in one of the meetings that we just recently had, the head of the O&A, she posed the question and said, is it not an omission that this is unsafe by you having a top-of-the-line security system? And I laughed, and I go, you were the one who wanted to make sure that we had a top-of-the-line security system. I said, I'm not going to fall into your trap. I said, it is absolutely not an omission. It is actually something that we steward every piece of property we have to make sure that we secure it properly. And so these are games. These are games being played.
It is. Let's dispel another myth quickly. Mm-hmm. The Justice Residence is not an emergent care facility. You alluded to it earlier.
Right.
This is not a place where women are rescued from a sex trafficking home on drugs and driven to the Justice Residence.
Right.
It is another phase of their recovery.
It's a long term.
They've gone through some sort of rehab to come off of drugs and alcohol. They have made a decision. They're not forced by the courts to be here. These are people that on their own volition have said, I want to get my life together, and I'm at the next step, the next phase. Because the recidivism rate is over 90%. When these women are rescued from these situations, they have no place to go. That's all they've ever known. They don't know how to get a job. They don't know how to interview. They don't have clothes. Some
of them don't have a GED.
Many of them don't know how to read. I mean, basic life skills they don't have. And they say, hey, I would like to have a relationship with God. I would like to learn some basic life skills. I'd like to get my life back on track. This is where they come.
Which, by the way, you bring up the relationship with God, right? So it's that the accusations, and this is not the exact term. There's so many accusations. We're actually going to have a lot of them on the screen for everybody to see themselves. So don't quote me on this, but the surrounding thing is that we are going to basically brainwash these girls, not give them a choice into Christianity, and this is going to be harmful for them.
Yeah.
You said a really powerful statement that is the truth, that they get to make the choice in entering into the justice residence. They're 70% more likely to finish a program and be successful when they get to make the choice. Yeah. When they get to come in and make that choice, we're letting them know, hey, this is a Christian home. We're going to train you in how to have a relationship with the Lord, but when you desire that. We're not saying, hey, from day one, for you to get in here, you have to sit down and you have to ask Jesus into your heart right now, or you don't get to come in.
This is foundation to Christianity, because most world religions are forced, and you're born into it. But only Christianity do you have to lay down your life, pick up your cross, follow Jesus. He gives us free will or the choice to do it, the same way Jesus chose to go on the cross. And so just like Christianity or Mercy Culture, anyone that goes to any one of our multiple schools, is they choose to do it, and then we disciple from there.
By the way, I think just from a legal standpoint, to prove what you just said, it's important to note that if it's not court mandated, meaning that it is a choice, then we are not claiming to be a rehab facility. So this is really important for people to hear, is that if we were submitting to be a court-mandated program, then there would be certain logistics that we would be claiming we have, such as rehabilitation facilities. We're not saying that. And this isn't court-mandated. This is no one is choosing the justice residences over prison. And I think that's important to note for people.
It is.
And at any point in the process, if the women say, "Well, this is just not for me," they can leave.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And
we have a plan. We have developed a plan on how to transition them out. When and if those things will happen. There will be women that make that decision to leave. We have a plan on how to transition them in the best way possible.
But I want people to hear, because fear is powerful.
Yes, it is.
Many people have been driven by fear statements. Governments, nations, war strategies will use fear to control and dominate people's minds and thinking. And fear has been used in this case massively to steer what I believe are many good people in the neighborhood, in the city, that would be for something like this, but they have been told fear statements like, on what you're just talking about, these girls are going to be held against their will. They're going to be held hostage in this place like they're in a prison. Like they're being held hostage in a prison. This is absolutely ridiculous. Our hearts are to restore, redeem these women, and then completely empower them to be able to have a job, to mother, to pay their own bills, all of the things that even some survivors before the city council got to testify that they are doing. This is the goal. Awesome. It's so exciting. But one of the other massive fear type statements is that a residence like this being built in the neighborhood is going to attract a bunch of traffickers and a bunch of crime, and it's going to make their neighborhood very unsafe to where their children can't play outside anymore, and a couple may not be able to walk their dog anymore.
The logic of that is like saying a police station would attract crime or a fire department would attract arsons.
Right.
It's logically unfounded. Yeah. And so it is a fear-based statement. And fear-based statements allow people to partner with things that are not true.
Yes.
And so the logic or the concept of that needs to be put behind people. This will expose darkness. Light exposes darkness. Yes. This will repel crime. Yes. This will not be a place where traffickers are lurking to pick up on a girl who's going. That's not what it's going to be.
Right.
This will expel that. So it's really a fear tactic.
Well, let me just speak from even all that we've heard. I spent the last 2 years in criminal jurisprudence hearings where we talk about these issues, and we talk about what's best practices for law enforcement, what's best practices for these task forces that are invading places. And the ongoing theme is that the most dangerous place you could put a house like this is in the middle of nowhere, because crime reigns in anonymity. There isn't a scenario where crime increases with an increased facility of security. That's just not what happens.
I have seen more of these types of facilities. It's like an old wineskin. Be closed down because they don't make it. The girls, one, don't have society. They don't have people around them. They're isolated.
Yeah.
If they need help, they're isolated.
Yes.
If traffickers find out where they are, they're isolated. And over time, there has to be some people that visit the place. So if your goal is that nobody ever knows where you're at, well, guess what? That first thing that happened, the first moment that it happens, that people find out, you have to close down. You have to move. How many times can an organization close down and move to try to find another place before they close down? And that's what normally happens.
That's what happens.
They close down because the isolation.
But no one peels back the onion, okay? So what really happens? Someone donates a piece of land that's not that valuable, that's in an abstract, far out place because it's cheap. Mm-hmm. And because they get that land, then they go and build in a place that's abstract and cheap. Mm-hmm. So how many of these organizations that have these far out rural areas that they built on, how many also have inner city or ones within communities that they did case studies on? Oh, the big answer is none.
Yeah.
Yes.
It didn't happen. This is what they did. And then some of people build opinions around their current situations.
Yes.
So, when people would say, well, why won't Mercy Culture just go, or the Justice residents, why won't they just go out and do it somewhere else? Because this is where our property's at.
We own the property.
This is where our multi-million-dollar property and community is at.
And the community.
That we're going to surround this thing at.
Families.
This is the best place.
That's right.
Yes.
For us to do it. It's amazing
To
because
support these
people
women.
move here to be a part of Mercy Culture or
Yes.
one of our ministries. You know what we always tell them? Be close. They'll call us, what do you think about this area? It's a little far.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a part of this community, whether you are a girl that was trafficked that has now been rescued, or a business owner, business leader, it's hard to be a part of a community when you live out in Timbuktu.
It is.
Yeah.
And so unless there's case studies from the same organization, it's just one person's random opinion based on their circumstance, which we have opinions based on our circumstance.
Well, let's talk proximity. One of the things that we're struggling with nationwide right now is a lack of law enforcement as a whole. And so as states peel back, now granted, I'm proud Texas isn't one of those that has really been hit, but our major cities have. And so our rural areas have as well, as a result of whether it be inflation, you name it, and law enforcement officers leaving the field because of the hostile environment. Right. And so as law enforcement goes down, now our resources go down as well. I have been told by law enforcement officers that if there is a place in which they want to make sure is secure, it needs to be within a very close proximity for them to get to quickly. And so I'll add in there, I think it's vitally important that proximity to a very near highway system is near. I mean, and that's why this location is not just where we want to do it. It is where it is needed.
Perfect location to do it. And I shared before City Council, 2 amazing places that have been some of the most successful in taking in victims of sex trafficking and restoring them, one in downtown LA and one in downtown Richmond, Virginia. And the one in Richmond, Virginia has multiple large ones for men and women that has been running for over 50 years. Not out in Timbuktu. I've been to them. Absolutely incredible. But, you think about these women, they have to do life, get a job. Some of them have children that have to be in schools, but they've been far out in isolation. And then all of a sudden, they're going to know how to socialize and work with people and parents and teachers and everything. And this is why community is so important and powerful for these women in their restoration. I want to pivot to something else that really helps people understand. It's a very simplified example. And again, I try to use this to educate in the Zoning Commission and in the City Council. And I just understand that there's some people that just don't like us, and they're gonna make the emotional how they feel about us response and decision opinion. I'm not talking to those individuals. I'm talking to the individuals that say, hey, I want to know the truth. I want to know what is your guys' heart. What is your heart behind this? What is the vision behind this? And to see if they can get behind that.
Yes.
And so this statement of the residents is going to make a neighborhood unsafe, okay? Put yourself in the trafficker's shoes. You are doing criminal activity every single day by selling individuals for sex. You are breaking the law and making a lot of money doing it. Do you want to pull up to a beautiful, massive facility with cameras around it,
24-hour
with
security.
people, 24-hour
Hundreds of people
security,
are here every day.
Hundreds
Law-abiding,
of people.
gun-owning Texans with concealed carry permits.
Are you going to pull up and be like, hey, I'm here to get my girl right now? No.
Right.
You are going to be handcuffed. In fact, I would love it. I would love it if that happened, because I would say, hey, here's our PD that's 2 seconds down the road that will take you where you belong.
And it's important.
And bring justice for those girls really swiftly.
This whole
really
community
quickly.
is filled with people who've been educated on how to spot a trafficker, how to see the red flags of these situations. These people know this. These professional traffickers know where they don't want to be.
Okay, look. It either they don't want to know, or you really don't know. Those are the only two options. Trafficking is happening all around us. Oakhurst is a couple miles from Lancaster, y'all. It's a couple miles from Lancaster. Trafficking has been happening around this neighborhood before any of us were ever here. Right. A place like this, and I think you were saying it earlier, is a beacon of light that repels and pushes it away along with criminal activity. We have invested, not us personally, but the investment into this property that was falling apart, had criminal activity all along Oakhurst Scenic Drive when we first moved in 4 years ago. $17 million we have put into this property to not only just make it beautiful, but to invest into this community that helps the community as a whole, and not just the church building, the school building.
Right now, as we're speaking and doing this podcast, there are hundreds of people in line being fed, which we do every week. We feed, we give away
1,000 families a week.
1,000 families a week.
We've been doing it for years.
And is crime happening while they're coming in and getting food?
No.
There was.
We just want to know. Yeah. There's no crime that is happening.
And we do that for no reason.
Thousands of people are being fed every
Jesus
single
to
week.
These people.
Yes.
So when I heard the gentleman get up at the beginning and talk about his kids playing in the front yard, like, I understand that.
I do too.
And I think I heard his heart.
Yeah.
And I genuinely want his kids to be safe.
Absolutely.
Just like I want my kids to be safe as well.
Yes.
And so our commitment is that we continue to make this neighborhood safe and this place safe. We continue to push out all crime and make sure the people that are experiencing homelessness get the help and the services that they need, the food that they need. We want to build and strengthen this community, not tear it down. So I want to remind the neighbors that Oakhurst is full of Mercy Culture members.
Yes. That's right.
This is our community. This is people that we love. And so those genuine concerns, we have them too. We're just saying this, is since we've come on this property, we've brought light into darkness. We've made it more beautiful. We've invested into it, and we're going to continue to do it.
We're going to continue
and we're committed to safety as well, because our family and our children are here.
Yeah. That's
good.
So during this time that we are responding to requests, we are building internally. One of the things is that we haven't been open to other organizations, what they say, or being educated or working with other organizations. This could not be further from the truth. My heart really started when we lived in Austin, Texas. Yeah. And the Lord had spoken to my heart prior. And I just, prior to moving to Austin, when I moved to Austin, I said, what are the organizations here and how can we serve them? And I didn't have my own organization. My heart was just, how can I serve these organizations?
That is absolute. I want to speak to it. I've known you a long time, and I've watched you for well over a decade now. Be humble, be kind, go into these meetings with your heart open and your hands like this just to learn. And you have had your head down, and you have listened, and you have learned, and you have served organizations beautifully. And so personally, it's upsetting. It's upsetting to hear the lies, the calumnies that are levied against you as some, egotistical person who's doing this. I still have not heard anybody make an articulate argument as to what the benefit is to spend $14 million on this facility. It's to be what Pastor Landon said earlier, to be Jesus to these people. We have a mandate from the God that we serve.
That's right.
To do this. And that's why we're doing it, because he spoke and we're trying to be obedient. And you have operated with great humility and you've learned a lot and you're an expert in this field. You just are. And I've watched you do it.
Well, what people don't know is for years when we were starting the church, you wanted to do this on day one.
That's right.
And I was like, hey, sister, slow down. Like, we got a church to build.
Which is not a phrase she likes to hear.
Let's get our feet underneath us.
Don't tell me.
She's like, we need $14 million to build the justice residence. I was like, we got leaky roofs in this church and red carpet. And it took us a while to get our feet underneath us. And I literally was like, hey, it's not time to build it yet. And so what you did is you prayed.
Yes.
You served. You got educated. And then you gave to many organizations over the course of years.
That's right.
And that's what they did. You guys gathered regularly to pray, to invest, to sow financially in all these organizations behind the scenes for years before we got to the place where we took the next step.
The first event that I ever went to I think it was before we moved to Fort Worth. I attended the NET gathering in the downtown Fort Worth, I think not convention center, but the Fort Worth Hall downtown. I was so excited. I was so excited to see what is God doing in the city and through these other organizations, and couldn't wait to meet other leaders and encourage and applaud and join that fight in Fort Worth. And so from that, we launched what was called Justice Nights, where instead of saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, we said, let's bring in other organizations so we can hear what they're about.
That's right.
What are they doing? I want to honor the way that they've trailblazed in this city, what fight they've been fighting. I want to listen and bring them before our organization, bring them before many people in our church, which most people, and I don't say this at all to toot my own horn, I just think that we've been in ministry so long that we see people that are more about building their own thing or their own organization. And the truth is, you and I are not bored people. We're not bored. We're not trying to think of something else to do. We are in this for one reason: to set captives free. And so I could care less if it's Justice Reform that's building this or another organization. I want to support you in it like a treasured vessels. It's amazing. I love Alicia, who is restoring the captives. And so this is what we did, is we began to bring in these other organizations onto our platform that they just got to share. They got to share about their fight. And then we said, you know what? Not all of them, but some of them we sowed financially, because we said, we want to partner, support you financially. And then we said, hey, can we pray over you? Because you are in a dark battle right now that not a lot of people are willing to fight. We did that for years.
We placed them in front of hundreds of people every month.
Hundreds of people,
and
live
we said,
streamed.
here's their information, text this number, go to their website, serve, volunteer, give them money. That was the purpose of those nights. In fact, Justice Reform, even in raising up the advocates, we called all of them and said, how can our advocates serve you guys? How can our advocates learn from you guys? And I don't want to say this to be nasty at all, but I say this, and then we're going to move on from it onto other stuff. But the organizations in Fort Worth, we have to come back to what we are originally in this fight for. And it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with these women that are stuck in modern day slavery. And if we work together, we will abolish it. And many of those organizations said no to allowing our advocates to come and serve off of reasons I still don't understand. Yeah. I still don't understand today if it's political, if it's religious indifferences. I don't know what it is. I hope we can overcome. Many our advocates do serve in, which is beautiful. But I just wanted to clear the air of that accusation that we don't support, love, honor, want to work with other organizations. It couldn't be further from the truth.
And I think it is also important to note that when you are pioneering something new, it is intimidating to those who are not willing to pioneer with you. And I think looking at what we're doing here, there's a reason we're building it. It's because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So the idea that we're going to go collaborate extensively with a group that doesn't believe what we're doing is possible is a fallacy. Because Why would we try to learn how to do what we're doing when it hasn't been done yet from people who don't want to do what we're doing?
Right.
And so it's not a hostility. It's more of, hey, we're going to pioneer. We're going to build something. We're going to share what we learn. And at the same time, we're going to continue to love and support what you're doing.
Yes.
But the fight against human trafficking is not singular. So the idea that we can't do something different and at the same time, we're not devaluing what they're doing. We're just saying, hey, that's your arena.
That's right.
Go fight it in that direction.
And we
need task forces.
We may disagree.
We need this, but we're going to build this residence.
When we may disagree on particular points or aspects, and we do. There are points of disagreement with other organizations. It doesn't mean that there aren't points of unity that we are trying to continue to build.
Look, we all disagree with some of our family members about a lot of different stances, and I can still love them and say, instead of saying, you're no longer my brother, you're no longer my cousin. Right. No, I love you despite a difference of opinion. And I think we're all mature enough to hopefully not choose to fight together to restore victims out of sex trafficking over an indifference on an opinion.
Yes.
I want to highlight that during this time, there was so many. You may know the number. I just stopped paying attention. There were so many slanderous articles that were written to us. The O&A, different individuals, they're stirring up. They start going to the newspapers to spread slander about us, about the justice reform, about mercy culture, and newspapers were happy to apparently do these hit pieces on us. And it's something.
So here's our team.
The number?
111 against the church.
Hold on, pause. 111 articles against mercy culture.
And 13 directed towards JR.
Towards the justice reform. And so what this creates, because here's the narrative.
Mind you, not one article about being one of the largest food distributors in the city.
Right.
Oh no, I did an interview and I told them all about it, and of course that was not in their article.
And so here's the thing: as long as Mercy Culture was a quiet, insignificant church that minded their own business and just had stinking church on Sunday, we were fine.
Yeah.
That's right.
But the moment we stepped outside of church and we're like, no, we're not Christians on Sunday.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Like, we're living out our Christianity. All of a sudden, we are right-wing radicals. How many stinking things that how many articles they try to link us to Trump this, Trump that, just nonstop. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how many articles they use Trump in the heading and then had nothing to do with Trump in the entire article?
That's
right.
But just random stuff. So, like, you got to be honest. I want to talk to the people that live in this neighborhood, and because you saw the flags and the signs were in your yard all political season. You know where your neighbor stands. This thing was political.
It became political.
And we became a target. And I've been very public of things I disagree with conservatives, with Republicans, with Trump constantly.
Same.
And they don't post about that. They don't talk about that. We became an enemy because of our religious political belief, and this thing became that strategy.
Yes, they pinned us, which was repeated at the city council meeting and at the zoning. Even after the vote, they encouraged us as a church and as an organization to stop bullying the neighborhood, which goes to show the power of their narrative that they put in the newspapers, that everybody all of a sudden believes, maybe because we're a big church, that we were the bullies, yet we would never be in this position.
111
we would
articles.
never be in this position if we were not being bullied.
Right.
So I just want to hit like a couple of wild things. I don't think people know.
It's important that people know.
When all of these articles are going out, what's happening. Because we didn't want it to become about us. We didn't want it to become about anybody here or poor us or this is what we're going through. We wanted it to stay about the fight for those that are being trafficked and to set them free. That's what we're sold out to doing.
And we have some good people in the Oakhurst neighborhood that read 111 headlines, all negative, and got swept up in conversations at the park.
But not negative, lies too.
Lies, full lies, negative, partial truths, total lies.
By the way, that 111 articles does not even encapsulate the fact that they put Pastor Nate Schatzline from Mercy Culture on every negative article they did about me when I was running.
We appreciate that.
So
appreciate
we're
your negative.
around 200. You take JR, Mercy Culture,
well, that's
and
my
Nate.
point. 111 wasn't even including that. And that's
so a narrative,
what's so bizarre about
a narrative has been built
Yes.
about mercy culture that is just simply not true. And a lot of good people in the neighborhood have been swept up in it, understandably so.
Okay, so due to these articles, we went through massive personal attacks. My tires were slashed. We had multiple individuals try to kidnap our children from church. You had a ransom on you where they get into your phone, call our CFO to try to do $1 million ransom call if we ever want you back. Wild.
I'm trying not to make a joke in this because they only asked for $1 million.
Yeah, you're like, hold on a second.
Which I feel like I'm worth more than $1 million. But
horrible.
I was a little offended. But in all seriousness, it is serious. Like, this really did happen.
You got to stick to the facts. So, but okay, real talk. They put our address, and we're putting the text up on the screen for you. They put our address in the Oakhurst Neighborhood text lineup to tell people online to tell people to come to our home to petition at our house at the time.
And in many other Reddit posts as well.
Yes, we have a 2-year-old at home with a young nanny. We have a 6-year-old. We have a 9-year-old. These are the people that say they value safety in their neighborhood.
And they want their kids to be able to play in their front yard and be safe.
Then they go, why do you have a security system?
But they're sending random people of whoever catches, whatever individual catches my address that's out there, and they put it out there for them to go to our home.
Every good person of Oakhurst that really genuinely cares about safety and wants their kids to be able to play in the front yard, this is what's on the other side.
That's right, that nobody talks about.
So yeah, we do want their kids to be safe and ours to be safe.
That's right.
And so, but this nonstop rhetoric of us being the bullies, after multiple years and 111 articles, we had to stand up and say, no, this stuff's not true, and this is what's going on.
And we didn't become unsafe to them; they became unsafe to us by the lies and hit pieces and the things they were putting out about us.
Utilizing the legal system to hold elected officials accountable to the laws of this country and of this state and of this city is not bullying. That is the appropriate course of action for a citizen. Also, telling a elected official, hey, if you don't do the right thing, we're not going to vote for you when you come up for re-election. That is not bullying. That is the way that the American political process works.
We don't live in communist China.
That's right.
By the way, our founders wrote the Constitution in a way that allows the American people to bully elected officials legally. And that's if you don't want to be bullied as an elected official, don't run for office.
Right.
I mean, you're quite literally doing the work of the people. And so if you're not doing the work of the people, expect the people to not elect you again.
And to hold you accountable for that.
But at the city council meeting, it was used to like weaponize us like we're the one bullying city council members.
When they're the ones saying, we won't vote for you again, Jeanette Martinez, as if you don't do exactly what we tell you to do.
Right. Which this is the way that politics works. This is the way politics works. And it's the way that you get elected officials to obey the law. You have to get attorneys sometimes.
But that's what you would expect.
And say, this is the law.
But when Chris Nettles did his little breakdown speech at the end and did his little charade and tried to set the place on fire and holding up the sign, I'm with Oakhurst, and we've made this political.
Right. Metaphorically, he didn't actually try to set the place on fire.
Yeah.
It was metaphorically, okay?
Got a massive fight with our mayor and starts cussing.
Everyone was
Children are in the room. I mean, it was insane.
When he disrespected the mayor and on purpose
the
sheriff. And on purpose pronounced his name wrong and then said whatever his name
whoever he is.
There was a gasp in the room. And I know there's members of Oakhurst that felt that dishonor.
Yes. Sure.
That didn't represent them. And then he's holding the guy that is making a mockery of the whole city council. He's disrespecting the mayor. He's disrespecting our church, disrespecting residents of Oakhurst, disrespecting the sheriff. And then that's the representative that's standing with you? Yeah. That's the guy you want standing with you?
Yeah.
And so he was the one who's like, oh, they made this political. No. Y'all have made it political the whole time. We're responding with our legal rights.
Yes. And by the way, it's important to note that specific city councilman, Chris Nettles, was also quoted by a staff member saying whenever one of our church members was trying to rezone a property in order to provide housing for students that wanted to come in and serve the church, not just serve the church, but just lead people to Jesus, he was quoted in his office saying, deny it. He said, because we don't want any more mercy culture on our side of town.
And this is the exact stuff that I want to unpack for people that people do not know. So let's fast forward. Now. We gave people some of the in-betweens process, right? Fast forward to 2023, we begin to meet with Fort Worth PD, Human Trafficking Task Force, the Tarrant County Sheriff's Department. We meet with them end of 2023, early 2024. We have our first meeting with Jeanette Martinez, our councilwoman of where we're building, that seemed to go really awesome.
It was really smooth. At the end of the day, we didn't know Jeanette. She came in. She was newly elected, and rezoning had just taken place. And so Elizabeth Beck used to be our city councilwoman. We know she's a far out there left-wing activist, hates me, hates our church, hates Christianity.
Defund the police.
Yes, wants to defund police. I mean, the whole 9 yards.
Tampons in boys' bathrooms.
The whole 9. Mm-hmm. I mean, anything you can't imagine, it's true. So at the end of the day, we're now looking at, we've been rezoned. I was very encouraged by that. We have what's supposed to be a more moderate candidate that wins election to oversee the property that our church is on and where we'll be building the justice residences. I reach out and immediately we get a meeting. It's a Zoom call. I believe that it was her along with city staff. And as we're talking to the city councilwoman, it was clear in the communication she had not been briefed on the fact that you're supposed to hate mercy culture. So that call went great because the idea of the project and what we were trying to do was such a good idea that she thought, oh, this is great. It ended positive. She goes, I don't see any issue with this. I'm going to hop off the call to go to another meeting. Why don't you continue to brief city staff? This is exciting. That's the response that we got.
Right. So fast forward to July. Kyle, why don't you give the breakdown? July comes along. We are getting ready to submit our application. And what happens?
Right. So a lot of people said we did this backwards, and it was actually intentional. So on July 9th, we actually submitted the building permit application because one of the pushbacks we got from the neighbors and city staff on the site plan amendment was, well, we don't know exactly what you're going to build. We don't know if it's going to fit within building code. We don't know if you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. And so part of the time leading up to this is the Justice Reform spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, a significant amount of money and a lot of time making sure all of the legal requirements were met and that there was absolutely no question on what was going to be built. And I don't know the final page count, but it was something like 300 and something pages worth of architectural plans, engineering plans, very, very detailed. So that was submitted on July 9th. We still had not submitted a site plan amendment, an application for that. And we knew we would have to do that. But we wanted to get through some of the preliminary building permit.
Yes. Can you tell some of the listeners why? Just give them a quick debrief. What are we zoned for, and why did we not need the zoning change?
Yeah. So in 2004, Calvary Cathedral, who owned the property prior to Mercy Culture, they were already zoned for what's called community facilities, and so they were allowed by law under their zoning to operate a church building, to have Sunday school classes. They could already do that.
Yep.
Calvary Cathedral had bigger plans for this property, and they knew the property would be used for more than just Sunday service and Sunday school.
The school that was in their heart. Yep.
Exactly. So they went to the city over the objection of Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, and they said, well, we want to be zoned for all church-related activities. Yep. And they went through the process, and City Council approved that in 2004. And it's interesting because sometimes City Council will create, what they do is they create what's called a plan development. In a plan development, all that means is it doesn't fit within a certain box. They kind of create their own zoning for the property. and they call it a plan development. And a lot of times they will create a plan development and put restrictions on it. You can operate any kind of commercial activity except a liquor store. You know, they're allowed by law.
Were there any restrictions?
Zero restrictions.
Zero
So it was
restrictions.
any church-related activities, and
Yep.
if you break down just the common sense, the dictionary definition of church-related activity, you will see that it is a very broad zoning. It really does encompass pretty much anything the church wants to do. Any church ministry is encompassed in there, and there's no limitations.
And no one's defined common sense. So like when their lawyer got up and said if the church wants to open a casino, so again,
which that's against the law. It's not. That shows for total lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
which that's what their lawyer said.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
And so again, this is a discipleship house that fits so spot on in this demographic or in this.
But at the same time, they don't get to define.
They don't.
They do not get to define what a church-related activity is.
The Bible
Yet they
does.
tried to bring, that's right, the Bible does. Yet they tried to bring that before zoning commission. They try to bring it before city council, and even bring up the accusation that they believe that the church should not be doing something like this. This should not be allowed to be a church-related activity. Who else is jumping up to do this but Christians and churches? Back to this timeline that you're talking about. So we fast forward.
So that
End
was
of July.
2004. The city green-lighted any church-related activities, and along with a plan development, one of the requirements is if you're going to build a new structure on your property, you have to amend your site plan. So you have a it basically is a survey that shows all the structures that are on your property. If you want to build a new structure, you've got to amend the site plan. It's interesting. This is not the first site plan amendment application that's been filed. In 2017, I think Pastor Nate alluded to this earlier, the Calvary amended their site plan because they wanted to put LED lights in their parking, switch out the parking lights to LED lights, and they needed a site plan. And they were fought by Oakhurst Neighborhood Association. But the city, I think, unanimously approved the site plan amendment. So that's what we filed. After our building plans were on file, we filed an application to amend the site plan. That was August 5th. And it showed exactly where we were putting this structure on our property.
Sure. And prior to August 5th of our actual application being submitted for a site amendment, what came out in the newspapers?
Yeah, so August 5th is when we actually filed the amendment. 19 days before we filed the amendment, the Star-Telegram published an article with quotes from somebody at the city, and we still don't know exactly who, but the article said the current zoning rules don't allow for our proposed use, and the church will need to apply to have the land rezoned. We hadn't even told the city what the proposed use was yet. 19 days before our application.
Did everybody listening just hear that newspapers report that we applied for a zoning change when an application was not in for another 19 days, that we never submitted an application for a zoning change? Why would there be such a push for us to get a zoning change?
Right. I mean, clearly somebody at the city had already determined in their mind, we're going to force a zoning change. They had told the media they're going to force a zoning change.
And is the reason behind that because a zoning change is a higher legal burden?
Well, I'll just speak to this as well. It's not just because of that. It's also because they understand that if we change the zoning for this property,
Change the rules.
we will change the rules.
To stop us from building whatever we want to. It removes our religious liberties to build under that church-related activity. And that's what they were out for. They knew that they could stop the justice residence from being built and remove our religious rights to be able to build whatever.
But wait, there's more. We show up to our church property. And there's a sign on our property that we submitted a zoning change.
From the city.
From the city.
Yes.
Yes.
Which we did not do.
We did not do.
Ever.
Ever.
It was never part of our plans. It's not a legal requirement.
Yeah, so after we filed the application, then city staff started telling our architect, because I wasn't involved at that time, they started telling our architect, you have to get a zoning change. And our architect responded, well, why? First of all, what do we have to rezone it for? And who's making this decision? And they just wouldn't tell him they said it's coming from somebody up above, but they wouldn't say who it was.
That has a bigger paycheck or higher power than me. It's coming from up above. And basically let us know that we will not put you on the docket to go before zoning and city council until you say that you're coming forward for a zoning change.
So we were being blocked from what we were requesting by the city for months.
Yes,
we can
blocked
legally
from even the consideration to look at this site.
Says
for months.
Coming from up above, certainly they're not talking about government, because we're supposed to have transparency in government.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that if we have elected officials, those elected officials are responsible for appointing a zoning commission, and those elected officials choose staff, then every person in the city works for us.
That's right.
It is not the other way around. And coming from up above, I'm sorry, that is an unacceptable answer for any request of any constituent to any form of government in the state of Texas.
Well, we couldn't get straight answers, and that's why we had to get our legal counsel involved, because we couldn't get straight answer. Mind you, we had a member of our church, that I won't disclose the name just for their privacy, but we had a member of our church attend an ONA meeting. Mm-hmm. And when the meeting was over, one of the leaders of the ONA said, we have the zoning commission, and I quote, in our back pocket.
Yes.
This was the
she
quote.
She stood up and said this.
That was brought to us. Now, we gave the zoning commission the benefit of the doubt, like surely people are going to do their job. Right. Surely they're going to honor the law. But we found out when we went to zoning, that wasn't the case.
No, it wasn't. They voted against us 6-4, 4-6. They voted against us. And I just want to make the note. You said our people that went to their meetings. We had many different leaders from Justice Reform attending ONA meetings that they could have called on us and asked us questions if they truly wanted to work with us and be educated on what the project was, to bring any of our team forward to answer any questions. We were at multiple of them. Never did they ask any of our team to come up and please share about this project. You want to know why these meetings were these rallies to take us out, take us down, come against them, and this is how we're going to do it. Can I
add one more thing?
Absolutely.
I think it's also important to remember that before it went to zoning commission, the city staff actually has to give a recommendation based off of pure legality.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with opinion, nothing to do with their ideas of what this property should be used for, off of the legal right of whether this site amendment can go forward. They have to rule and take a vote on, should we say that this should go forward? The city staff had no other option but to say, hey, we recommend approving the site amendment. Then it went to the zoning commission, where they get to make just some random
arbitrary
decision based off of how they feel that day. And so legally, it is on the record that city staff said they have the legal right to do this, and they still chose to recommend at the zoning commission that it be denied.
Which is shocking, which means we have city officials that 100% play politics. They ignore the Texas Constitution and laws, and without a doubt infringed upon our religious liberties. Yes. Without a doubt. This was political. This was religious.
Yes.
This was personal.
And why did they do it? So they did it for all of those reasons, and they did it because members of the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association and certain members of the community put pressure upon those officials to do what they wanted them to do, which is part of the political process. We have never accused Oakhurst membership or Oakhurst residents of bullying for putting pressure on the political people that represent them in government. What we have said is we have the same right as members and tax-paying citizens of the city of Fort Worth to rally support and apply the same pressure and require that elected representatives follow the letter of the law.
And while
we were accused of making this political.
And while I think that it's deplorable to choose a little bit less traffic rather than ending trafficking, they have every right to do so.
They do.
So they have the right to speak up. But I think it's also important to note that standard practice in these zoning commission meetings, and we saw this, by the way, with different cases that were brought up before our case, is that not only do they do a ruling of whether they're going to recommend to approve or deny, but they're also responsible for giving reasons why, so that these organizations or companies or businesses, whatever they are, can go forward and that they can remedy the situation.
Right.
That's the idea. That's what the zoning commission has put into place, so that you can remedy a situation before it takes up the time of the council.
Yeah.
They voted to deny us with absolutely no reason.
Reasons.
It's unprecedented.
Yeah.
And then screamed at their top of their lungs not to say a word, not to do anything, and to leave the room after giving no reasons as to why they voted against us.
Talking about standard procedure, so part of this process, I was able to, or I had to go back and look at the last 2.5 years of every single site plan amendment that has ever been filed with the city, because I wanted to know how long does it take from the time you file one of these applications to the time you get to present it to zoning commission. And I think the average, I have it in my notes, but the average is somewhere around 43, 44 days. That is the average time. You know, every once in a while you'll have something that goes 60 days. Most of them are 30 days or less. Average is 44 days. At this time, we are going into September. We still are not even on the docket. We are going on what would have been more than 100 days at this point.
Yep.
And who knows how long we would have waited if our church community didn't start speaking up.
That's right.
And that's what I want to say. So right before we made this very public and started the call to action, we were requesting, and I think 8 or 9 times at least, I requested formally a sit down, because that's another part of this standard procedures. You have a pre-development conference with city staff where you can actually sit down face to face with city staff and ask them, okay, what part have we not complied with? What do we need to do?
Right.
And they wouldn't give us a meeting. They wouldn't put us on the docket. They wouldn't give us a meeting. And I think the Friday before, I'll let you talk about our call to action and everybody who came out to support. But the Friday before that happened and it went public, I think the last update I got from the city staff was, I'll let you know if or when we have an update for you. And so I was striking out. I had nobody to talk to, and so that's why
city lawyers weren't responding well to any of your emails, because they said stop contacting city officials, just work with us, the lawyers that weren't responding to us, until we had to have a meeting with the mayor and the city lawyers to present our entire case of what's really been going on. I think the only place and platform we have been able to explain what has truly been happening until now.
By the way, you can't legally in the state of Texas tell, and this is just something else that was crossed the line from their side. You cannot legally in the state of Texas tell someone they cannot contact their elected representative. That is tyranny. That is absolutely anti-American. That is anti-Texas, and it is unequivocally against the law.
Yeah.
There's this idea out there that we just woke up one day and decided to go nuclear and start accusing and start putting out videos and start making it public, when what we are seeing from our attorney is there's a different thing that was happening here. There were months and months and months where we finally reached a point, years we reached a point where we said, okay, the city, the way that they're going to stop this from moving forward is to ignore us. They're not even going to bring it up, bring it out of the open, and allow it to be placed on the docket to be discussed.
This is why we brought it before the church. People that have sowed
we had
their
no other
time,
option. That's right.
Their finances, blood, sweat, and tears for years behind this place, that say, hey guys, your voice matters too. We've had some noisy individuals that have wanted to rally against us because they don't like what we believe. Okay, now is the time for your voice to be heard, of why you're you support the justice residences and why they must be built. And then all of a sudden, when we get noisy and loud about our why to legally build what we can build on our property, we became the bullies.
That's right.
Right.
So yes, we did. We did get put. So we have this meeting with the mayor. She gets us onto the docket to go before zoning.
Which,
Zoning votes
way,
against
it
us.
needs to be said how we got.
That's
the
right.
Yes.
Right. So talk to us. I mean, at the end of the day, we met together as I'm proud to be a part of the board and just said, what are our options? It was honestly a moment of desperation. I'm like, okay, Lord, we know you've called us to do this. We know that the only thing standing in the way right now is corrupt bureaucracy. And so all of a sudden it was brought by both of you of just like, let's just bring this before the church and ask them to speak up about it. Within 20 minutes of you asking the church to email our mayor and city council, we had a meeting that was being scheduled with the mayor.
Yeah, not death threats that were coming our direction.
No.
Emails of saying why this is important.
That's it. It was emails
After
of
being
support.
stonewalled.
Emails of support. They were not mean. They were not angry.
That's right.
It was simply, hey, we don't understand. We believe in this project. Please put this on the docket. And of course, about that time, our mayor reaches out to me and says, okay, let's have a meeting. I wanted to just express that. The only reason
That's it.
that we got this far was because our church stood up and simply demanded of their elected officials that they follow through on what they said they were going to do.
Which is our right.
Absolutely. And I just want to highlight one of the individuals or a couple of the individuals in that meeting that we're grateful for, because I think after they heard what we had been through and our case, they really stood in support of saying, hey, they have the legal right to be able to build this. And I would love for you to just share about them to applaud.
It was a real powerful meeting. And before we get there, I do want to say, we tried educating the city and the city staff on our constitutional rights, our rights under the current PD for church-related activities. I wrote them a very detailed, one of the bullying tactics they said we used against them, I wrote them a very detailed letter outlining the zoning history of our property, our legal rights under the Constitution, both the United States Constitution and the Texas Constitution. So it wasn't for lack of trying for us to be able to get on the docket or at least get a meeting with the city before it went nuclear, as somebody said, I think.
And nuclear is really just being civically engaged. That's what they're terrified of.
That's right. That's
right. So we did get a meeting. We sat down, and it was very powerful. I mean, I remember it to this day. You got to share your testimony and the heart behind this project, and I think that's when things started to shift. We met. Got to sit right across the table with City Council, Melinda Ramos, Trey Qualls. They heard us out, and they listened to us. And by the end of the meeting, they agreed with us. They knew we were within our rights. Also, there was the Assistant City Manager, Dana Burdoff. She was fantastic.
Thank you, Dana.
Yes, thank you, Dana. She came to every single one of our meetings, even the meeting with the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, and she agreed with us. When she heard the full story, she agreed with us, and I think at some point she even went and met herself with the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, the meeting they had to vote unanimously to oppose our project. Right before that vote, Dana told them that we are within our rights. We have the right to build it. We are within our zoning, everything. So we are very thankful that we got that meeting.
Yes.
That the church stood up and answered the call. But then that the city staff and the city attorneys listened to us.
So during and around that meeting, there was also a wild series of events that took place, and I'm like, in which place do we actually? Where do I start in it? I think one of the biggest accusations that we heard, or I shouldn't even say biggest, one of the, because there was multiple that I was flabbergasted by, but that we have been abusive in our language of calling them witches and warlocks and demons and all of this, right? And so people are like, oh, this church is not really Christians and they're so abusive and they're name calling these people. Okay? And let us break down what happens, because of course, all of a sudden they're mad that we're beginning to make progress. We have this meeting, we get on the docket. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to bear down. So they put out all over the neighborhood. We have people that attend the church that live in the neighborhood that brought it to our attention, that they're going to do a witches walk. So they do a witch's walk.
It was on their Instagram.
In October. It's on their Instagram. We're going to put it on the screen for everybody. They do the witch's walk. The next morning, this is Saturday night, I happen to be preaching on Sunday morning. Now, we do not have evidence that this was them, so I'm not telling anybody that I know for fact that this is them. But they do the witch's walks. The next morning, we get to church, and on every single door of our church is taped curses on every single door that our team has to take down these curses. During the same time period, we have a woman that approaches one of our board members and introduces herself, says, "We need a meeting, and I'm the witch of Oakhurst that you've been talking about."
One of, I believe she's
Yes, I'm one of. Introduces herself. She's not joking. To the point that this board member has to say, "You don't intimidate me," because she is trying to intimidate him to let him know I'm a witch. Okay? Then we have I don't know if they realize that their forum that they talk to in the neighborhood is seen by many people that are in support that live in that neighborhood. But we have another woman that begins to accuse me of abusing women from sex trafficking, who happens to be, and I do not call women derogatory terms. I am for women. I champion women. So I do not say this in a derogatory way that maybe somebody else might. But as a Christian, a Bible-believing Christian, what her business is, what she does, and selling rocks and the stuff of what we would say is a seance and praying to a false god, is what her business is. Okay? This is what she does in Fort Worth. Christians call that witchcraft.
She posts about it publicly.
She posts about it publicly. She's one of the ones on there accusing me of abusing victims of sex trafficking. Then we have one of the neighbors, I don't know if you want to share it, that goes to Mercy Culture, what they wake up to one morning on their front lawn.
There's a pile of blood and feces on their front porch with evidence of a sacrifice with witchcraft material. So I have a member of our church reach out to me, "Hey, Pastor, I woke up to this on my front doorstep." And so we had another similar situation with the blood sacrifice on our Waco property. This is what witchcraft activity is.
Yes.
So Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. So in witchcraft, they continuously sacrifice animals, and even some in high-ranking ones. If you go study this out, human beings to this day. It is a part of modern day witchcraft. So when we address from the pulpit, so we didn't get up on a Sunday morning and we're calling neighbors names.
Right.
I want to make sure that people in the neighborhood know this. But in Matthew chapter 16, Jesus turned to his closest disciple, Peter, and he said, "Peter, I need you to get behind me." He said, "Satan, get behind me." Mm-hmm. Talking to Peter, calling him Satan. Jesus wasn't mean. He wasn't bullying Satan. So this is for mature Christians that are real disciples of Jesus. Yep. He turns to them, it's Peter, and says, "You're acting like Satan. Your behavior's demonic, and you have to get that spirit of offense behind me." So as spiritual leaders, the Bible says that we're not in a natural battle. Yeah. Our battle's not against flesh and blood. It's against rulers, authorities, principalities. Yeah. Okay, it's the same reason why we pray. Mm-hmm. We're not talking to ourselves. We're talking to God. This is what the Bible calls spiritual warfare. Okay, we are in a battle that's not against flesh and blood.
That's right.
Which means it's spiritual.
That's right.
So if we have a group of people that are trying to actively resist us around every corner for 2 years, from helping survivors of human trafficking, this is spiritual.
Yes.
If it doesn't make sense to not want to help, when your only solution is do it somewhere else, this is spiritual.
Yes, absolutely.
And what we're doing as pastors of the gospel, as what we're doing as a New Testament church, is we're saying, hey guys, this is spiritual activity.
Yeah, and actually we're calling that evil because it is.
It's evil.
And that we know the difference between what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil. And so it is correct to call a seance on a neighbor that attends mercy culture that they wake up to call that behavior evil.
It's evil to say.
And so it's not calling and saying, hey, every neighbor in Oakhurst is evil. We have never said that.
No. Our church members live in Oakhurst.
We have never said everybody that lives in Oakhurst neighborhood is a witch and a warlock. But the activity and the behaviors, we can say this is witchcraft, or this individual that claims like this to Christianity, this is what a witch does. This is a witch.
And if there's, this is the first time I get to look at my camera on the podcast, if there's any members of the Oakhurst neighborhood that was offended by not understanding this, then as the pastor of Mercy Culture Church, I genuinely and sincerely apologize to you. I even use the word repent to you. I wasn't calling you a witch. I'm not calling you a warlock. I'm not saying you're demonic. I'm teaching my congregation the way the Bible instructs me to teach and disciple a congregation into spiritual things, the same way that I teach them to have faith, the same reason I teach them to forgive, the same reason I teach them about biblical marriage and what the Bible says to do and how we were supposed to respond in all things. That's what I was doing as a pastor. And so if you took that personal, or you brought that and said, hey, or you were misinformed, and thought that I was saying that about you, I genuinely, truly apologize to you. That's not what we were doing. That wasn't our heart. Yeah. I want you to hear from this church, we apologize.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we desire to work with our neighbors. Like, we are all invested into this region. We love it so much. Right. And we spend probably more time here, than we do at our actual home. We are invested into this place, and anybody that wants to meet with us, work with us, we are all for it. I want to jump back into this timeline of what's happening up into the city council meeting.
And I'd like to speak to that.
Yes.
One of the things that I think is so important is not only did we encourage our church to reach out to their elected officials and their city council members, which, by the way, anybody who is an elected official who doesn't want someone to reach out to them needs to be replaced. And so here we are, the church is reaching out, but also we did that. We set up meetings. We sought those meetings out, not just with the mayor, but with individual council members. Every council member that would meet with me, I met with, and that would meet with us, we met with. And I'll never forget meeting with some of our councilmen that were just awesome, whether it be Councilman Michael Crane, Alan Blaylock, Charlie Lauersdorf. These are common sense people. I think you met with Gina. I mean, just awesome. Just awesome moments, including with the mayor, that you're like, okay, they understand the common sense of this. And I think Michael Crane said it best, one of our councilmen. He just said, to oppose this would be to go against the rule of law.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, there you go. I mean, it's common. But
you guys also met with the O&A.
Correct.
Again.
So here's how that happened. We were meeting with Jeanette Martinez, who to this day, I don't even know that I know this woman, because the way that she talks to you when we're having a conversation without political pressure from the left is different than she's going to respond.
I'll say this. It's pretty weird that she would send us a letter saying, I can't wait to work with you.
Yes.
I want to partner with you. I want to work with you.
We should post that letter.
And we'll put it up on the screen. This is sent to us during this entire time of right before zoning commission. She knows we're going forward, and we get this personal letter from our office.
Let's work together.
And just for the record, the letter was not just, I want to work with Pastor Heather Schott. It wasn't just, I want to work with Pastor Landon Schott. It was, I want to work and partner with the justice reform.
With this organization.
Yes. So we reached out and
we thought that until we met.
Well, correct. We got in a group with the meeting. By the way, we requested a meeting. She says to us, I don't have time to meet with you until after the zoning commission meets. And we're like, okay.
Come on, the point is to meet before.
September 6th, I believe, and her first available date was November 18th.
That's wild. Yeah. Hey, let me just tell you something. For a part-time city councilwoman, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, months later.
And so that said, we finally get through the zoning commission meeting, and all that happens with the zoning commission. They go against the rule of law and what the city suggests that they do. And about that time, we're meeting with this councilwoman that even now, I mean, we've gotten that letter of support. Even now, we're sitting here thinking she's probably common sense. We sit down with her, and it is Stonewall.
Yep.
It is cold. And this was our first meeting we had with her. And we start to go through all of the timeline, single by single, issue by issue, and say, here's what's been done to us throughout the city. And her response is, what does the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association think? And I was so taken back.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, what?
As if her district is only the Oakhurst neighborhood.
The response that I gave her was, I guess I don't understand what that has to do. And she goes, well, you have to understand, Nate, those are my constituents for my reelection. And I responded with, I'd like to remind you, Councilwoman, those are also my constituents, and I don't care if they vote for me if we go against the right thing to do. And so immediately there's hostility in the room. What we come to at the end, because no matter how many facts, no matter how many, of the legal facts we're laying out, Kyle did it brilliantly as we're sitting there. She was just, what does the Oakhurst neighborhood say? And I couldn't quite understand it. And so finally, I just said, would it make you feel better if we once again, not for the first time, but once again, sat down with the leader of the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association in a room with you so that you can hear our responses to their concerns in person? And she goes, oh, that would be fantastic. So we go to meet, and Pastor Les was with us. And as we go into that meeting, the questions that they had were very derogatory. They were very indirect. It was trying to trap us. Like we said earlier, it was, well, why'd you put top tier security? Well, because you requested it, and we do that for all of our facilities.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, the questioning continued. And by the way, this was supposed to be a two-sided meeting where we were able to ask them questions. They were able to ask us questions over the course of an hour. We're 50 minutes in, and it's been nothing but one-sided questions from the Oakhurst to us.
Which we thoroughly answered.
We answered every single one until finally, and it's a great moment by Pastor Les. Pastor Les says, what is the threshold by which you will support this project? Mm-hmm. Because we had answered every single question they had and put to bed any risk that they had. And they said, oh, well, I don't know that there is a scenario in which we support it.
Exactly.
So what's the point?
And
what's the point of
and we
this
were just
meeting?
like, at what point and I said, Jeanette, I said, how do you feel about this? And she goes, I'm just here to facilitate a meeting.
That's right.
And I go, great. I said, at what point would the threshold be? And she said, well, why have you looked at any other properties for this? And I go, that's funny that you say that. I said, that's a great question. I think it's good for everybody to hear. I said, if there's another property in Texas or in the nation available, not only will we look into it, it can definitely be the next site that we build after we build the one on our property.
Because we're building them all over.
But the city didn't come to us and say, hey, here's a building you can use, here's a land you can use, we'll help you do it. No one else donated a property that's in proximity so the community can get behind it. The only alternative is don't build it here on your property.
So after,
and here, Jeanette, also with what you're saying, because you're like, what in the world, why are we having this meeting right now? But Jeanette, back in July, before our application was even in, is on record saying that she opposed the project already before an application.
On a email from her, which kind of explains a little bit of why she's backdoor opposing this project. July 29th, we have an email from her saying, I am opposed to this project. And just to refresh everybody's memory, we hadn't even filed our application yet. We haven't even said, here's our proposed use. This was July 29th, and we file it in August.
So then who's playing politics?
Exactly.
So that meeting ended. And that meeting ended in what I believe to be about as good as it could, where we simply said to the Oakhurst neighborhood, what feedback would you give after we had answered every safety concern? We had talked through every single issue that they have, even down to, and I think this is silly, but even down to parking, where they were like, I'm concerned about the parking, where we literally said, hey, we're adding parking. So we're going to mitigate some of your concerns. And so even after all of that, I said to the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, will you consider supporting the project now that we've answered all your questions? And their answer was simply no. And I very kindly just said, okay, I think we're done here. And we looked to Jeanette, and Jeanette goes, okay, thank you for meeting. That was it. We went above and beyond to answer these questions. There is absolutely no reason for Jeanette to vote against this project. In fact, it is honestly disgusting to me as another elected official who ran off of fighting the evil of human trafficking that a city council woman in a city of our size would stand there and oppose a project in her district that would be the first 100-bed facility to restore women. As a woman city councilwoman who claimed to fight for women's rights and to fight against human trafficking, she would oppose the largest facility of restoration for women.
I wonder if we wanted to build a Planned Parenthood on that property if she'd opposed that.
Yeah, 100%.
I doubt very seriously.
100%. And one of the other big things that was brought up in that we kind of blew up for fun with shirts and everything because the audacity blew our minds. And if you have any just compassion in you for what these women's reality is of the abuse that they're enduring while all of us are sitting in clothing, comfort, with heat, with AC.
And what you're about to say, we didn't make up. Go ahead.
With food in our fridge and our bills paid and a roof over our head, one of their biggest concerns is the traffic that this place is going to make their neighborhood unsafe. Everybody listening, I'm not talking about those being trafficked. I'm talking about car traffic. They said it was going to bring too much car traffic that was going to make their neighborhood unsafe. And this is so insane to us just to have to make the statement before we actually even got into the nitty-gritty of how logically it makes no sense. But the fact that there are individuals that care more about extra car traffic, if that was going to be the reality, more about that than rescuing those that are being trafficked and brutally raped and abused. I cannot imagine even having the audacity to bring that up. But they did, okay? You said that they have the right to, so they use their right, they bring that up. Now, it's wild because they did not hire a lawyer to fight a 400-unit giant apartment building that is off of the main road to their main entrance into their neighborhood. They didn't hire a lawyer for that to stop that. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vehicles and cars right there, okay? Our residence that's going to be on the north end, back end of our property that is away from any entrance to their neighborhood, by the way, that they have multiple entrances all the way around their neighborhood. And then the simple fact that if you're educated in this realm of human trafficking, you know that the majority of these women do not have cars. They hardly have any of their own things.
And even if they do, they can't bring it to the justice residence.
Right. So these women that are, and they can bring in some of their own personal things and stuff
like that. One of the own city council member visited multiple times, and he addressed the traffic. And he just said, hey, in between services, we understand that there's a little bit of traffic jam. A lot of people go to church. But as far as majority, 99% of the time, it's not a traffic problem.
Yeah, and they're not causing more traffic, but the apartment buildings that are built all the way around the neighborhood will definitely bring traffic. And so the accusation about the traffic is pretty wild. So let's fast forward. So we get to the city council meeting, okay? All of this has been happening, and I just want to mention this. In October and November, our leaders from Justice Reform are in that neighborhood with a booth almost every single weekend answering questions that any of the Oakhurst neighbors may have. The Oakhurst neighborhood, they have a booth set up to just attack us and spread lies. We set up a booth up and say, hey, we're just going to answer any questions, have kind conversations with the neighbors leading up to this city council meeting. So we get to the city council meeting, and actually I want to pause right before the city council meeting, just a couple days before. We see the letter that the ONA types up that they send out for the Oakhurst neighbors to sign if they don't want to write their own letter to oppose the justice residents. And I'm reading it, and I'm thinking they're just going to say, we don't like it, and it's going to cause the traffic that's unsafe. And then I keep reading, and all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, they're accusing in this letter Mercy Culture Church, Landon and I, of abusing and exploiting women rescued out of sex trafficking.
Which is actually legal defamation.
Yes,
it is.
It's defamation of character.
And everybody who signed that created defamation.
And I don't think those neighbors understood what they were signing. Hopefully, if you were listening, you fully read it. if you did not read it and you are coming to the realization of what you did by signing that letter, I would email your city council member and say, I do not agree with what's in that letter. Please tear it up, take it back. I do not agree, and make it very aware to everybody that.
To be clear, you said in writing by forwarding that to your city council member, you said that local pastors and city leaders are abusing people, which is 100% false. There's zero proof for it.
Absolutely.
It's complete lie allegation that you just partnered with legal defamation.
Absolutely. And so I want to put it on the record because it's my heart, it's my pastoral heart, and I know that there's going to be accusations that fly 1,000 more for many days to come, and it's part of it, But these women we have loved with all of our heart, pray to this day, have amazing, flourishing women that have been fully restored and redeemed, that we're so proud of, that testified before the city council, that have a job and paying their own bills, and literally the happiest days of their life. But even some of these former girls that came, it was our joy that we got to raise the provision for some of their restorative surgeries and find tattoo artists that were going to tattoo over their branding from their traffickers, and empower these women to have a voice and to stand on their own and to get jobs. It was our joy, and this is what we've done from the beginning for these women. It's what we will continue to do. And I take these comments, these lies, these slanderous things, I take them very seriously for those that are listening. And I will not play around with these type of accusations. That there is zero and will always be zero evidence for us abusing these women, because it is our heart to sacrificially give, love, restore, and empower.
I want to say this from a pastoral standpoint. Jesus warns us that we are blessed when people persecute us, insult us, and say all kinds of evil things about us because of him. And there's a tactic that the enemy uses to find offended or disgruntled people and use them to weaponize the behavior of the church or discipleship. So over and over and over in Jesus' ministry, many people fell away. Judas betrayed him. Peter denied him. And the mob put him on the cross. And so they praised him, Hosanna, and then put him on the cross because the mob or the mass majority of people were easily manipulated by the accuser of the brethren or false claims, lies, and accusations.
Yes.
And so there's always going to be people that leave a church because they didn't like that we have a biblical stance on marriage. I had someone leave the church recently because we forgave someone for stealing from us. And they're like, how dare you forgive them? I'm leaving. I'm like, well, we're called mercy culture. It's kind of one of the biggest things that we do.
Forgiveness is not an option.
It's not an option. And so literally someone left because we didn't forgive. People leave for a variety of reasons, and people get offended. And they love getting in their group chats. We had an individual that came and said that I bullied them on social media because I commented, "You're so brave," in his stance against us.
Yeah.
And so, so what I'm trying to say is that there's going to be people that leave, or people that have maybe hurt feelings or bad opinions. And that's not going to sway what we are and what we're doing.
Right.
Many people left Jesus. It is a part of the job. It's a part of ministry. It's a part of public service. And discipleship sometimes could be challenging.
Yeah.
But this ain't a country club, guys.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's not what we're doing. And so if you want to hang out and have fun with people, go join a country club. This is a discipleship church where we help people spiritually grow, and we teach the Bible.
And I want to make the statement that if you're trying to go seek out individuals that you think are offended for whatever reason and place your narrative or your offense inside of them, especially survivors of human trafficking, you are the one exploiting them. If you are trying to put your narrative and agenda for them to go to the newspapers to try to say bad things about us, for your narrative and agenda to stop the residents from being built so that you feel like you won for your neighborhood, This is what exploitation is.
And that's
you
evil.
are exploiting these girls,
Evil
and that
behavior.
is
That's
evil,
right.
and that is wrong. Absolutely. So we get to the night, city council night. Here we are going before city council, sharing our testimonies. We listen to the other side for hours. We are there until I think 12:30 at night. It was wild. There was a war. There was a battle that took place in this room. We mentioned a little bit of Chris Nettles and honestly just the foolish behavior that took place.
I was embarrassed for him.
He embarrassed himself.
That he's literally just dishonoring the entire room. Mayor Matty Parker, the sheriff, he's cussing in the microphone. I mean, just saying that we're the ones in this political place.
And he's supposed to be a pastor, just right?
Yeah, he's supposed. I mean, he's supposed to be
That's
a
what's
pastor.
on the official website. Is he calls himself Pastor Chris Nettles? So that's the title he.
And he gets
presents.
angry at one of you for referring to him to Pastor Chris Nettles, even though that's the title that he has up and is also one of his public
And I
platforms.
called him Councilman Nettles when he quoted scripture and said right is right and wrong is wrong. And apparently he can't find right and wrong in
know
this
what the
scenario.
difference between right and wrong is and
'Cause
what
he's
the
an
law
activist.
says.
That's what he is. He's not a pastor. He's an activist.
Yeah.
Well, and I was frustrated, and the reason I called him out is because right before we went, there was two zoning cases that were actually zoning changes that went right before us. One of them was a Buddhist temple, and they wanted to take their property from a residential zoning into this planned development that would allow them to build over 100 what they call stupas, which are
Apartments.
apartments.
It's crazy.
No different than what we're doing.
Unbelievable.
Over
Zero
100, and
resistance.
one of these structures would be
was applauded.
175 feet tall. The max height under that zoning is 35 feet. So they were bending all kinds of rules.
Pretty close.
They were putting housing on their property, and not one question was asked. And they got unanimous support by both zoning commission and city council. And so I pointed it out to Pastor Chris Nettles that the same laws that protect the Buddhist center are the same ones that protect our church.
Which just exposes if this guy pretends he's a pastor and resists a fellow church.
Yeah.
This is 100% political.
Yeah.
And we're just saying, guys, we're calling a spade here.
Spiritual battle.
This is political.
Yeah.
And we are going to use the strength and the influence of mercy culture to expose every single one of those council members that either voted no or hid from the vote and ran out before the vote was made. And we're going to let everybody in every district be aware of, because these guys are the ones that are making decisions for millions and millions of dollars in our city.
That's right.
And if they don't have the wherewithal to understand right and wrong and truly adhere by the law, then we need to make sure that we have individuals that represent our society that can do that well.
By the way, anybody who claims after voting against our project to be anti-human trafficking
is a liar.
It's a liar.
Yes.
If I hear one campaign commitment or promise from one of these elected officials that honestly should resign immediately because they are unfit for office at this point, if I hear one single claim that they are anti-human trafficking, we will remind the public that they are not just indifferent in the fight, they are pro-human trafficking.
You're such a bully, Nate.
Let me tell you who else would have voted no on our project. A human trafficker would have voted no.
right.
Yes.
The cartel would have voted no. People who are evil, and I'm saying this from my official capacity as a state representative and as someone who is a pastor at our church, that is evil. There is no in-betweens about it. We actually would not tolerate this level of evil at the state level. People would be voted out. And yet, in the anonymity of a city council position, if churches don't rise up and expose these things, these people continue to do evil in the darkness within our city. And so absolutely, I am committed to using any platform or microphone I have to expose that these city council people.
So those four were Chris Nettles, Elizabeth Beck, Carlos Flores,
and our councilwoman Jeanette Martinez.
Yes.
Absolutely. And then who ducked out of the meeting who didn't even have this?
Jared Williams.
Yes,
so
and Jared Williams refused to do a vote.
Yep.
And I also think it's important for those 4 council, because we felt like we were discriminated against. And I know they wrote headlines that our church claimed to be discriminated against. But Councilman Lauersdorf actually said on the record, and we have the soundbite to play, is those 4 voted against us because this is political and they do not like the church.
And they said so in a private meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at the city council.
Well, and then Lauersdorf repeated and said that's what happened. That's why they've already told us in executive session, this is why they're not voting for us. So all of our feelings of being discriminated against were absolutely
verified.
correct.
I don't want to violate any ethics and discuss what we discussed during executive sessions, but some colleagues made it quite clear that this is political with their attack on the actual church and their political leanings, and made it be known that that was the main reason behind their feelings. So
that's what
By
happened.
the way, I think it's just equally as important to say, hey, Mayor Matty Parker, Charlie Lauersdorf, Alan Blaylock, who else voted? Gina. Amazing.
Michael Crane.
And Michael Crane.
And Michael Crane,
These guys stood with us. And hear me, it was not, and I appreciate what they did. But I also, as an elected official, need to also point out that it is not heroic to do the right thing.
No.
It is expected. And so
They
at the end
followed
of
the
the
law.
day, they just said, hey, this is what we're supposed to do.
That's right.
And they're not looking, that I know of, for some ribbon. We don't just ask for a reward because we vote correctly on a bill in the state legislature. This is just our job, which is why it is deplorable. I'll say it again. It is deplorable to vote against
because
this.
we told them, don't look at us and vote no because you don't like us.
Correct.
Right.
You're not voting for a safe place for us.
Yes.
You are voting for the survivors that just had the guts and were brave, and they were the heroes in the room that
That's
came
right.
forward, that Mayor Matty Parker was the only one that honored and said, thank you for sharing your testimonies, but honored them that came forward. That's who they voted no to. They looked survivors, or not survivors, victims that are stuck in modern day slavery. And they said no. That's who they said no to, and that's why it's deplorable.
And to clarify, it is not bullying to make sure the entire Mercy Culture community, our friends in the media, and our friends of our friends all know which one of these city council members didn't stand on the law of Texas and the United States Constitution and didn't stand on grounds of morality, ethics, and righteousness. The bottom line is they did not do the right thing. And if someone won't do the right thing once, they won't do the right thing over and over. And we need godly leaders.
Yes, we do.
We need people of integrity.
Yes.
People of accountability that will lead our city the way our city deserves to be led. We need to make sure we find those leaders.
There's a lot of chatter that says that the community wasn't heard at the city council meeting. The truth is, over 6,000 citizens of Fort Worth signed a petition in support of this project, and hundreds of them showed up in person to make their voices heard.
They said in 25. Wait. They said in 25
That's
years.
Right. They've never seen anything like it. The citizens of Fort Worth were heard. They were heard loud and clear, and they held our elected officials accountable.
Hundreds and hundreds of letters were presented.
One thing, because we had so many people come out, but they had to sit in these overflow rooms. But and they had video monitors set up so that the people in the overflow rooms could hear what's going on. And I know a lot of those people felt like, well, maybe they weren't part of it. But the coolest thing was there was a lag on the video.
Yes, that was so awesome.
Something would be said in the chambers, and then 2 seconds later it would be said out in these we could hear the roar and the cheers and the applause coming from them. So every single person who came out was
Your voice
felt,
was heard.
and that was so cool.
So
I want to put the
was.
6,000 signatures in perspective. I think that would have been, I mean, don't quote me, somewhere ballpark of if someone was running for mayor, I think the third or fourth candidate was getting less than like 9,000 votes.
Well, I would say it like this. Every one of those city council members who voted up there, it's important to note that many of them won their seat with less than 6,000 votes.
That's right. And there were just over between 300 and 400 signatures from the Oakhurst neighborhood.
Yeah. Yep. And so, okay, we have a packed out place. Okay, it's this epic battle of a night, comes down to the vote. And I remember seeing those green squares go up, and I literally thought, is this really happening right
counting it?
now
Wait.
after years of opposition and resistance and accusations? And I was so grateful for the victory that night. I would tear up right now. We're going to be celebrating for a while. But, the city council really encouraged all of us at the end to work together. And they said, neighborhood, Mercy Culture, Justice Forum, we want you guys to work together. And as we're leaving, many of the people from Justice Reform and Mercy Culture Church went to reach to shake hands, to have conversations. And it was like, oh no. I don't want to shake hands. I don't want to hug. I don't want a conversation. And then the next day, they release a post that says, we are still looking into all of our legal options, insinuating that they are still potentially wanting to sue. Now, they have no legal ground, but I'm just saying, if they want to stamp and let everybody know, you guys, the proof is out there, who has been obstinate, refuses, does not want to work with us. It has been them since the beginning, and then that was the day after their response to us.
The proof is in the pudding, where we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and countless man hours and effort to accommodate just about every request that they have given to us. We've accommodated those requests. I asked the question in our last meeting with the ONA, is there any level at which you would support this project? The answer was, I don't have an answer for you, because the truth is, the answer is no. And so the only way to appease them is to not build it, and that is a non-negotiable.
It's not only a non-negotiable. We're talking about the same legal counsel who asked the question in a public forum. Are you planning on building a casino on this property?
Right.
That's a level of incompetence that we can joke about it all day long, but that's a level of incompetence that you probably shouldn't be representing people.
No, that was astonishing.
Only because casinos aren't even legal in the state of Texas. And so looking at that alone, not only are we looking at incompetent people instructing this neighborhood association, we're also looking at someone who would be going against every single legal process being approved at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to make this statement. The ONA does not represent every Oakhurst neighbor.
That's right. That needs to be said.
And I think a lot of neighbors are scared into that, thinking, first of all, that it is like an HOA, and ONA is not like an HOA. You have to pay into it to be a part of it, and people from all over this area get to pay into that ONA. And the ONA is not the first and last say of Oakhurst neighborhood. And anybody that listened today that you got clarity, maybe you had no idea. There's some people I've had conversations with on social media that was very misinformed by fear and all the different things that have been said about us in newspapers. Today you've heard the full story and you're like, whoa, I didn't know this. I have clarity now. This sounds like an amazing project. We want to let you know, Oakhurst neighborhood, we would love to work with you as our neighbors. We'd love your support. You can find out more information by going to thejusticereform.com. If you have more questions, we would love to answer your questions. Again, we're not going to put up with the accusations. We're not going to waste our time with the accusations. God has called us to build this place, and we are zeroed in on building a place that is going to restore women out of sex trafficking. We are going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it on this property.
That's right.
And then we're going to build them all over.
That's
that
right.
won't be stopped. We are doing it. If you want to jump on board and mark this as a historical moment that you were part of this massive initiative of stopping and restoring victims out of modern day slavery, join us. You can text the word justice to 59090. Also, for more information, if you're listening and you want to give, I don't know if you want to bring it up right now. I am doing a call for those that are listening right now. If you want to give to this project, to give, you can text the word justice to 59090. And the reason why I look at him,
Before we started filming, I said, hey, every time we do a video like this, they actually, people talk about both sides of their mouth. At the city hearing, one person said, we don't have enough money to do this, and it would put such a demand on city officials. The other side said, we're just doing this to raise money. So I'm like, well, which one is it?
Mercy Culture is trying to raise money through it.
just decide. I mean,
make money off of it.
One of the articles accused you of making money off the Justice Reform, and you don't even work for the Justice Reform.
That's right.
Yeah, I work for the Justice Reform for free.
And so, but these are those moments where no matter what we do, that people attack. And the truth is we've raised millions of dollars for this, and we have millions more to go. And it'll be millions every year because this is a great work that we believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And we're forthcoming with where all those finances go, the responsibility dinner that we do every single year. We have a great fear of the Lord when it comes to stewarding finances. And so if you want to give, you can text Justice to 59090. And again, for more information, you can go to thejusticereform.com. Thank you guys so much for coming today and sharing the story. And I just thought it was so special as I'm sitting in a circle of men, because that's another thing that the anti-human trafficking industry tries to pin, that men are the problem. And I just want to say, I honor you men. Men are not the problem. You guys are the solution. And you have been fighting side by side with me from day one, praying, fasting, sharing in it with me.
It is.
And I'm grateful for you guys. So
we're ready.
Yeah, let's go. It's time to build. We are building the
Justice
Residences. We'll see you on the next episode of Holy Disruption. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Holy Disruption, where we are awakening the bride of Christ and calling the church back to holiness. If you'd like to continue with me on this journey, follow me on social at Heather Schott, and make sure to subscribe at Mercy Culture on YouTube and all podcast platforms.